Hello. So, today I thought I would show you exactly what state I was in, what conditions were met before I met my twin flame, my other half of my soul. What was the state I was in, and what had changed to make me open to the connection. And I think the first and the most important thing, which I don't think many people who are engaged in this kind of quest have a problem with, is the will. So they think. So the problem with this is many times we think we have a will. We think we have the desire for the other half. But we don't. We actually have an addictive need or a necessity or an idea or a fantasy that they're going to complete us or something. So I was actually in a state where I just had a ceremony where I married the universe, and I was very contented in myself. I was very happy to be me and to be alone with myself for the first time in my life. And it was in that state that I was very much in my heart, with a lot of joy and a lot of just for the first time feeling very, very contented. And I just, after a few months later, I sort of sat with myself and I just thought how wonderful life is, and I just had this heartfelt sensation and a question. If I do have a soulmate, if I do have another half, I'm open to it. What have I said here? I said, if I have a soulmate, I'm open to his existence. That was it. There was no and I need him, and he should be like this, and he should da 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 da. It was just, oh, wow. The idea that I could then share this whole thing. And I had no feeling of desperation, whereas before, whenever up until I married the universe, it was always who's the next person. It was totally addictive. And this was something completely different. This wasn't anything to fill me. This was something where I, for once, really, truly wanted to share something with others. But I have to have the caveat here that I was by no means perfect, and I was still in so many addictions, still am, but at that moment I didn't even know what they were. But I can see now, even though there was that moment of heartfelt intention of I want to meet him and share this life, there was then a wave of other things, of expectations and addictions, and yet my law of attraction had changed to such a degree that a lot of those men that I was attracting at that time, none of them, they were all celibate. And I was sort of finding a way to observe my own sexual projections, which was at everyone. And I'm going to make a separate video about just how pervasive this is, where we do this even as tiny children, projecting sexually to try and bolster other people, so that, and I used to think it was my superpower. I can make other people feel good. I can see the best in everyone, when really I was just sexually projecting. But this kind of was changing at that moment, and I could start seeing myself a lot better. So I've said there's no need to be perfect. I was still trapped in many emotional addictions, but I was actively trying to make different choices. And my law of attraction was showing me this, that I was still repeating similar patterns, but I could see that they were patterns. Also, I've said I'd very recently opened to my emotional body, and I was coming to realize and be humble to the level of my suppression. So up until that point, I was going around saying, I'm just the happiest person. I've never been angry, and I don't have these sorts of emotions. And then I'd just done a ceremony of holotropic breathing where you sort of hyperventilate with people holding your hands, and I was screaming and kicking, and all these emotions were coming out, and it was humbling, and it made me realize how much was under the surface. And it was a few days later that I met my partner. So my eyes were open. I was in a place conducive to heart opening. So it was a gathering, a rainbow gathering, and there was a lot of eye contact. I was in nature, experiencing the elements. We were eating raw food for a month at the top of a mountain. So already this, just a different choice, a different environment, it's change. It's something, it doesn't matter where you are. It's just having that change, having that shift. It doesn't matter if you're in the same house, but just having a shift in consciousness, a different type of behavior, it allows you to move into a new space. And I was surrounded by people, which during this pandemic lockdown, it's interesting to even imagine that we were hugging everyone every day. And I felt so much of what I don't want. I felt so many eyes upon me, and sexual projection from others, and people needing things from me. And also, even though I'd become celibate and cut off that part of my life, I changed from wanting a man to wanting a crowd. So wanting to be a crowd pleaser. And suddenly the ego addictions I was having met felt really sleazy. So people asking me to give them readings, but kind of coming to me like, oh, give me, you have something for me. And I was getting this sense of validation, but it felt so dirty. And it was in that moment that I then meet him, and he wants nothing from me, and I can't take anything from him, and I can't project at him in the same way. It is a mirror, and it's just bouncing back at me. And in any other circumstance, maybe I wouldn't have seen it so clearly, but because I could observe, and with the raw food we were eating, I was very clean, I could really observe everyone's energetic play, the drama, the story, and he had none. And it was just like, of all of these blocking things, there was this one channel that was so clean with him and so clear, and I just followed it as much as I could until I found my own walls and things, and that's another story. But up until I met him, I had the will to meet him that was not desperate. I had a feeling of contentment. I was secure in myself and happy with myself. And actually by that point, because I'd married the universe, I'd made an intention within myself that I would never be alone, and I would never feel alone ever again, because I'm married to the universe. It was a very clever trick against loneliness, and also something quite protective and closing in some ways. But it then led me to this other place. So there are so many layers that you kind of, it's like a Rubik's cube, the consciousness. And the third one, you don't need to be perfect. Don't think that you have to be absolutely spotless to meet him and make yourself the ultimate person, because when you meet this person, they will draw out your perfection by the explosive potential of meeting the other half of yourself. It will just happen. But just the desire to better yourself, the desire to be happier, the desire for love, the desire not to repeat the same miserable patterns over and over again. That's enough. Just to be open to it. And then I've said 4, humility. So I realised how emotionally uninformed I was and confused I was, and how many misconceptions I had, and that was bubbling beneath the surface, and that really helped to know there was so much more I didn't know. So not to have any preconceived ideas of what it would be. And 5, my eyes were open. I was in a very clear space in terms of the food I was eating, the lifestyle I was leading at the time. I was clean, no drink, no drugs, no meat, no fish, no eggs, no cheese. Consuming, very clean, and in nature, and with people who, even though there were layers of everyone with different addictions and layers of very shady characters there as well, there is a fundamental intention in that kind of gathering, which is we're here to have a heart share. And especially in some of the women's circles I had, it was very intimate heart sharing, and we would hold hands and sing around the fire and eat together, and just more of a community spirit, or a spirit of something completely different, which is what we need to open up to, and what these soul relationships are, because they're not addictive, and they don't feel immediately gratifying like a lot of these emotional addictions. But this is what I mean by my eyes were open, because in that moment I was getting so many emotional addictions met. So many people were validating me, and even one man, I remember when I was giving a talk about human design to all of this crowd of people, one man, he said, he's French, and he said, "You are so cool." And I remember like this feeling of like this like sleazy but like an orgasm of ego, like, oh yeah, he thinks I'm cool, and everybody just heard him say that. And then this like, ugh, that's like my ultimate fantasy coming true, and it's disgusting. And my partner was sitting around the fire at that exact moment, and I noticed after that he got up and walked away. And I'm sat there with all these people who think I'm cool, and I'm like, I'd rather be with him being real than with these people who are only saying that about me because they feel bad about themselves, or they want some sexual interaction with me. And the sexual interaction is not literal sex always, it's also just a validation, just you're a worthy human being, and so those were my five conditions that I can identify were necessary for me to have met my partner, and to have been able to see him clearly enough. Not perfectly, but clearly enough. Yeah. So I hope this helps you, and good luck with this amazing endeavour of having a real heart-based, soul-based relationship, whether that is with your twin flame or if it's just with your flatmates or your family. It's just coming from here, taking responsibility for what is actually yours. Yes. No guilt. No shame. Only love.